Hello and welcome to another episode of the Maverick Mystic Arts podcast. In today's episode, we will be continuing with our exploration of Franz Bardon's Initiation into Hermetics, Step 9. So, there's a lot of fun stuff in this step. The first portion is on the neutralization of the elements. So, this is quite important, and it was touched upon briefly, I believe in step 7, in relation to using drugs to induce clairvoyant experience and spiritual experiences. So this takes that a little bit further. Now, as always, we break it into the 4 elements. So in terms of the fire element, right, he calls this the immobilization of the fire principle, right, or creating a type of dysfunction in the fire principle. Okay, so in this group belong all experiments of clairvoyance which are undertaken by gazing at an object, such as crystal gazing, gazing or focusing on a dot or a point, gazing on shiny surfaces such as black ink, black coffee, a mirror, and so on. You could include in this a lot of the work that Carlos Castaneda did with like creating these eye exercises around the sun, looking at flames, etc. Okay, so these are all ways in which you force a type of clairvoyant experience. There's different types of eye exercises you can do that will strain the eyes. And yes, there is a type of resilient development in the sensory system, the same way you develop resilience through the musculoskeletal system, lifting weights, the same way you develop resilience astrally when you're working with the astral fluid and the elements from that perspective. There is a development here, but these are all exercises that can create a forced break. Okay, so what is a forced break? A forced type of wearing down of the matrices. Okay, a forced separation, not fully of course, but a forced softening of the matrices that is done outside of the context of equanimity. And this is the really important part. Something that is done outside of the context of equanimity, an exercise that is outside of equanimity. So this has a goal, which is to force clairvoyant function, but it's not done in an equanimous way. So how do we work in an equanimous way? Well, this is done through balancing of the elements and the harmonious effort. Okay, all of these forced things are in a way similar to taking drugs, in that while you are choosing to take the drug or you are choosing to do the exercise, it is reliant on the external of the exercise to force a type of internal reaction, as opposed to working from inside, from a space of equanimity, and allowing that particular function of, say, clairvoyance or whatever the heightened spirit sense is that information's coming through, to function harmoniously and naturally. Okay? So the next one is the immobilization of the air principle. So I'll read this because it's just a sentence or two. In this group belong all experiments of clairvoyance, and when he says clairvoyance, you can include the spiritual experience through any of the sense gates, which are undertaken by burning and thereby creating fumes or smoke, such as the burning of incense, inhalation of narcotic fumes, vapors, gases, and so on. Okay, so here's the thing, is let's say you're burning incense. There are incense which have a very strong relationship to spiritual processes. You can load incense with energy to release them when they're burned, to release the energy when it's burned, or that intention. There's a lot of work that can be done with incense. Okay, but if we are using the fumes, once again, to weaken or soften the matrices, then once again, we are not choosing from an internal equanimous space, the entrance into the space that we are moving. We are relying on the substance, and as such, it's like falling down the stairs to get to the bottom instead of walking down the stairs to get to the bottom. You don't really have much agency or sovereignty during the experience. You give up your sovereignty to the incense. Now, this could also be people, hell, sniffing glue, right? That'll give you a type of experience. So is there smells that are very good for you? Yes. Are there smells that can be productive for spiritual processes and energetic processes? Yes. However, we want to be very aware of how we are achieving or having spiritual experiences, right? Of the subtle sense variety, of the clair sense variety. Okay? So, the next one, immobilization of the water principle. The immobilization of the water principle is brought about through experiments such as taking narcotics, alkaloid substances like opium, hashish, soma, peyote, mescaline, which enter the bloodstream via the digestive process. So the air principle, those enter the bloodstream via the lungs, and for the water principle, it enters the bloodstream through the digestion. So you can include ayahuasca in there, you could include mushrooms and all kinds of things into this water element. So, are there things you can consume which are helpful? Yes. However, if you're consuming these types of substances to have spiritual experience, once again, how is it that you're having that experience? You are weakening the mental astral matrix, right? You are weakening the substance that binds the mind into the energy of the astral body and through that into the vital and physical. Okay, so through weakening that, yes, you are essentially weakening your protective tree, your integration, your alignment, which opens you. When you are open to the potential to see things that you couldn't see because the mind's identity is no longer stuck within the emotional frameworks that have existed or within the physical. So you can make very potent changes. You can also have incredible clairvoyant experiences, clairaudient experiences, etc., etc. However, the theme here is, once again, you are not choosing through your spiritual skill to open. You are forcing yourself open. Okay, so we got to be really careful with this forcing ourselves open. There is, what I've noticed at least, deep within, there's a type of dissolution of respect for this entire entity that occurs when we are forcing the process like this. Not to say that you can't have positive overall experiences through using this stuff, but you certainly don't want to rely on it for your spiritual experiences. So beware of that. The last one, which is probably going to be the most difficult to palate for many of us, is physical practices. Okay, so we'll read through this one. In this group belong all practices that cause a split consciousness or a shift of consciousness. For example, dancing, swaying the upper body, rotating one's head, spelling of letters in the feet, and so on. This also includes all involuntary and pathological visions of the mentally ill. Furthermore, all pathological cases that are triggered by fright, terror, anger, exhaustion also belong to this group. So, this is most physical rituals. All right. This would include things like a sweat lodge, things like a sun dance, things like spinning in circles that you see, where people will spin for, I guess, hours and hours, right? There's, so it mentions swaying, rotating. There are exercises that many traditions do that are designed as a sledgehammer to blast away your protection, to blast you open, right? Now, the theme, again, is you are forcing a break. You are forcing open and forcing essentially your integration and protection to subside. So, can you have spiritual experiences? Yes. Can you discover more about yourself? Can you see aspects of yourself that you couldn't see before? Yes. Why? Because you have softened the matrices through the practice. Now, have you done that through an internal equanimous state? No. What we have done in this scenario is, again, we have forced open those doors. Okay? So there is no agency there. There is no sovereignty there. If you force open the doors through any method, that means that you somehow have to find a way to force the doors closed. What makes us think that we can force the door open and then somehow have the skill to very skillfully and choicefully close the doors and reintegrate and center very naturally? I don't know. But one of the things that we try to do if someone has done a lot of forcing open type of experiences through any of the element frameworks that we just used is physical exercise, right? Sharper movement, stuff that works on your balance, heavy weights as well. Anything that will take the mind, which has been forced open, the matrices that have been forced open, and now the consciousness is no longer locked into the framework of the body. It's gone, and we have to find a way to force it back. So are there ways to do this? Yes. However, we can avoid the need for this by taking our time and using the internal skill to feel into those matrices, feel into those protective membranes, those integrations, soften them open through meditative skill, through spiritual skill and development, okay? And all of the same experiences, and not just the clair experiences, not just the clairvoyance and the spiritual experiences, but all of the development and softening away of the identity and being able to see and change and evolve and free ourselves, all of that stuff can occur, including the opening and potential to touch into more and more refined alchemical states. All of this stuff can occur in the absence of the force methods, in the absence of imposing an opening on the systems that are at play. Okay, now, one of the things is that often the experience will seem hugely potent if you're using a forceful method, because it is taking you from here and you are seeing things from here. So, oh my God, crazy, incredible progress, want to do it again, all this stuff. Now, let's say you have, those are our benchmarks, right? Let's say, once again, you're starting from here. You have a daily practice. Maybe you do retreats as well for days on end or weeks on end. And you, of course, during a retreat, you will get this same type of big differential in what you experience and where you were fairly quickly, right? Not necessarily as fast as forcing the door open, but it will happen. And then you have this experience with the retreat come down, or from the forceful expression, the come down from those forceful experiences, where you experience the world, yourself, the light, all of this stuff from here. And then suddenly, your perspective can stay up here, but the skill, the ability to touch it, because it was forced open, drops down, and now you're at a place where you're looking up here from down here, and you're going, oh, this sucks compared to this. It's a very common experience, not only with the forceful method, but also with retreats. So that was one thing that took me a little time to learn, was that if I do a retreat, it's a similar sledgehammer type of experience. Now it's done from a different standpoint. So it's done with agency. It's done with sovereignty. But it's going to take you deep fast, right? And so you might not be able to sustain a practice that will keep you in that peak state all the time. So you have to be okay with things falling off a bit, and then through daily practice, what once was the end of a retreat skill level becomes your daily skill level. And I find, within a year, it's almost always within a year that your daily skill will match where you were at the end of a retreat, if not sooner. One I don't know if it's a mistake, but one thing that I tried to do for a long time was to sustain that. Whatever I got to, I wanted to sustain it, which meant, let's say it was 16 hours a day of meditative activity, or non-activity, or whatever you want to call it, for the retreat. Post the retreat, what was how much did I have to do to sustain that? And so that's where I found, it's 6+ hours a day was about what I had to do to sustain that. Okay, and then every little retreat opportunity that I had, whether it was a few days at a long weekend or whatever, would just bump it up more. But, that can be unsustainable if you also have a bunch of other stuff that you need to do. So you have to look at your lifestyle, how much time that you have, how much energy you have, what you can devote. Because when you're in a retreat setting, there's no distractions which are siphoning off your energy. There's nothing that you have to think about or deal with other than the processes that you're working through from the alchemical standpoint. So because of that, all of that energy can just, everything just focuses in, and bang, you're off. So point being, we have to be aware of these come downs. Okay, now we have here and we have here. The forced equivalent to, say, that 6 to 8+ hours a day that it might take to sustain the end of a retreat type of skill set, would be suddenly, from a drug standpoint, now you have to take those drugs all the time. And then you become less sensitive to it. So you have to take more drugs and more drugs and more drugs and more drugs, because you develop a bit of a resilience to it. And that's a really potentially disastrous way to have any type of long-term, healthy, harmonious spiritual progression. So let's say, included in whatever retreats you might do, you have a daily practice. Say a good couple hours a day is sort of a baseline to aim for. Okay, this is, 2 hours a day. I found 4 hours a day was where things, you can really start to ratchet up the progression. Okay, now let's say you have a couple hours a day, you're practicing, you are touching into some refined states. Every day, maybe you start here, but every day you go a little bit. Now the differential there is very minimal. Okay, but it's growing. Now because that differential is minimal, we won't have such a novel relationship with the spiritual experience. The novel nature of it is what makes it appear so majestically spiritual and interesting. And that is, and shiny and glittery and all this stuff. And that is where you get a lot of the spiritual folks who take drugs, who also practice, talking about their relationships with God specifically, with divinity specifically. And a big part of that is these big fluctuations. So through a daily type of approach, well, we don't get these huge differences. We are still growing and evolving, right? We're still touching into these potentials to the point where, this is important, to the point where the novelty, even though the novelty is not there, the skill is there. The potential for experience is there. Because those are there and it's not novel, we don't really notice them often. We don't think of it as special. It's almost mundane because it's just part of how you see the world. When something is new, when something is novel, when the difference in awareness is so big, of course it's this crazy powerful experience. So then you give the experience over to how you got there. Maybe it's the drugs. Maybe it's a super intense retreat. Now the retreat isn't exactly the same as the drugs by any means whatsoever, but it is something to note, to be aware of, that you can have those come downs. So let's say it's a retreat type of scenario. You hand that over to the retreat and you go, well, I guess I need more of these. Just like I guess I need more drugs. We want to try to stay at that big differential of novelty, because if you talk to anybody who's finished a retreat, how was your retreat? The sky opens and all the amazing stuff of the retreat comes out. And so we want to have that peak differential again. Okay, so peak differentials are novel, they're fun. However, the foundation, cultivating that foundation and that slowly growing, it siphons off some of the novelty, but you still have the same skill. Now, because it's not novel, because it's not special, it's often not noticed, right? It's just a part of how you live. It's just a part of how you experience the world, okay? So these are things that we want to be aware of. Now, especially, I mean, these days, there's a lot of people engaging in the drug side of this opening capacity. We need to remember that that's one of the biggest functions that's occurring, is this opening. Now, sometimes there is intelligence within that is working its way through. That the opening opens us and we can touch higher stuff. That's not necessarily everyone that's going through that though. So we need to be able to reintegrate, to find our grounding, our solidity, our stability, to return the mind, the consciousness, and really reintegrate it with the astral bodies, with the emotions, with the physiology, with the vitality, the physical body. All this stuff needs to come together, come back together. And it all needs to ideally grow together, right? If it's all growing together, little at a time, we won't have those big, oh my God type of moments as much, but there is a depth to the practice that arises, a depth to what is seen and what is experienced. When it's a novel experience, it's all shiny and glittery, and there can be value in that. It can serve as motivation for us to continue. It can offer us insight. Okay, but when, I'm sure we've all experienced this, when you hear someone, maybe they've just done their first meditation retreat, blah, 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 so amazing. this is where you get the type of individual who's going to do something new, and anyone that they speak to, this type of person is going to just talk your ear off about why that is the salve to the entire world and how everyone should do this because this will be amazing for everybody, etc. Blah, 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 blah. Right? We've all experienced that. So we need to be aware of that. We need to be aware of those tendencies. Why are we talking about this crazy, amazing thing? Boom. Differential in awareness and experience. Right? Little at a time. Okay? Maybe you can go to the gym and you can, on your first try, deadlift 300 pounds, without too much training or whatever. Maybe you're relatively fit, but you're going to burn out the nervous system. You're going to burn out the endocrine system. You're gonna burn out, rip tissue, whatever is going to happen, right? You might be able to do a thing, but you haven't built up a body that's capable of doing it. Now, because this is spiritual activity, it's not only the body that needs to be capable. The astral body needs to be developed and capable. We need to have harmony and balance, equilibrium. So, working with the elements. That has to be done physically. It has to be done astrally. It has to be done mentally, working through the mental functions, right, in relation to equanimity. Okay, through that, we will then be able to integrate, close the doors, have everything unify and come together, and open, so that we can invite higher alchemical energy, states, and intelligence to rush through us. Right? Invite that stuff to move through us. And then we can integrate with something beyond ourselves, which will cause all types of evolution. Okay? So, I hope you found this helpful. This can be one that a lot of people do not like because we get very attached to the things which bring us these peak novel experiences. Okay, maybe you've done, a specific type of mirror work, and hell, the whole next section in this step is mirror work. So, it's kind of funny. Maybe you've done some type of visual experience work and you've had great success with it. Maybe you have done some type of inhalations or vapors that you're smoking, or some types of drugs, or ayahuasca or peyote or something. Maybe you've done all kinds of these experiences, these types of exercises, and you've had good success with them. Okay, that doesn't mean that they don't serve a function, right, to open the door when we're really stuck, when we really can't do it. It's not to rob anyone of the value that you may have had in those experiences. However, everything is just the thing to the next thing. This is a lesson that the man who got me into meditation way back in the day shared with me. It's just the thing to the thing. And that thing is just the thing to the next thing. Everything is just the thing to the thing. So, you've done these exercises, the swaying, whatever it might be, the spinning, the sweat lodges, whatever it might be. The heat, of course, like physical duress, once you can't close against it anymore, you have to open. That's the only way to get through it. So, positive potentials, absolutely, right? But we need to develop agency in the spiritual path. We cannot be reliant on exercises, reliant on drugs of any kind, reliant on particular sense gate, like fraying of the sense gates through overworking them and that type of stuff to try to force open these experiences. Equanimity. This will give you a very, very refined over time, a very refined and sovereign doorway to the emptiness, the akasha beneath the body, the akasha beneath the vitality of the vital forces, the akasha, the emptiness beneath the astral body, the akasha, the emptiness through the mental attributes as well, right? This gives you doorway after doorway after doorway of choiceful opening, choiceful equanimity, equilibrium, emptiness, unification, and sovereignty. Okay, thank you for your time. I hope you enjoyed this. If you have any questions, drop a comment. If you're interested in training, I have a spiritual attunement retreat coming up in June here, 2025, British Columbia, Canada. So that will be 16 days of some pretty intense transmission and training. So if you're interested, come on out to that. Details are on the website. Also, there are courses on the website in Tai Chi and Hermetic Alchemy, Meditation, Qi Gong. There is a Zen Den, which is a Q&A reference library on the website. Any questions you might have on the materials or anything else, you can shoot me a note and I'll throw up a video response for you as soon as I'm able. And lastly, if you're interested in private coaching, I offer private lessons online as well via video calls. All right, thank you for your time. Have fun, practice, bye.